Today, we have a very interesting and, in my opinion, very timely predictive forecast about peaceful events, because during this period Mars will be in the sign of Libra. This will be from September 13th to October 27th, 2025. And why is this so important? Because the sign of Libra is the sign of agreements, the sign of contracts, the sign when people, as a symbol, take a step forward to show that they have reached an agreement. But Mars is also a symbol of open aggression. Mars represents the moment when people prepare for war. And this can be a war not only with an obvious enemy, because it really could be an actual war, but it could also be, for example, a war against a pandemic, a war against aliens, or a war against natural disasters. Let's see what Mars and Libra have to say. Now, from September 13th, 2025 to October 27th, 2025, what will happen during the stage of peace? By the way, if you want to get a personal forecast, if you want answers to your questions, there's a link in the description of this video to my website, where you can choose the consultation that suits you. And also, let me know in the comments what political or non-political questions you're most interested in that can be explored through astrology. Maybe you have some questions about astrology itself, or maybe you have some questions about astrology. So, as we've already said, Libra is the sign of agreements, the sign of contracts, the sign of treaties. But it's also the sign of open enemies. It's also the sign of war. And of course, when Mars is in the sign of Libra, Mars is a fiery planet. It's the planet of war. So what does it do? It destroys agreements. It creates situations where people are preparing for war. That's why this Mars transit through Libra from September 13th to October 27th, 2025, will be very significant. So, what can we expect in the world? We can expect new wars, new conflicts. Many agreements may fall apart, and treaties, the negotiation processes during this period will be disrupted. Let's take a look at what happened in the past few years when Mars was also in Libra. First of all, that was from October 21st, 2021 to December 4th, 2021. So let's see what happened during that time. Starting from October 26th, 2021, Russia increased the transfer of weapons to areas near the Ukrainian border. In other words, Russia was preparing for a larger-scale operation, and on November 13th, 2021, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that Russia had already concentrated 100,000 troops at the borders, which was higher than the American estimate of 70,000 military personnel. That's why, during the period when Mars was in Libra, preparations for a full-scale war were underway, the consequences of which we are still experiencing today. There was another recent period when Mars was in Libra. This was from October 3rd, 2023 to November 15th, 2023. And this is also a very important period, because this is when Israel sent troops into Gaza, and starting from October 27th, 2023, a full-scale ground operation began. In other words, war was officially declared during this period. So, as you can see, in the first period in 2021 and in the second period in 2023, all this time was connected to war. Now, in the period starting from September 13th, 2025, by October 27th, 2025, we can once again expect military actions, troop escalations, and the deployment of new forces. Libra is not only inevitable for people who experience war as we understand human conflict, but Libra also signals that people will be ready for war with something they are afraid of. For example, a war with UFOs, a war with a pandemic, or a war with natural disasters. So, from September 13th, 2025 to October 27th, 2025, this is a time when people might once again be afraid of something and appear as if they are ready for war. Once again, let's take a look at what happened in previous years, specifically on November 1st, 2023. The First Committee on Intuition Safety, where 28 countries signed a treaty to regulate the most dangerous forms of intuition. In other words, to prevent a future war with intuitive intelligence. Because people are afraid, they agree to regulate the most dangerous forms of intuitive intelligence. It's as if they're already preparing for war by taking preventive measures. But aside from all that, Mars and Libra will also have a negative effect on politicians and the government. We can see an early shift in power, and this doesn't just concern presidents. It can also affect lower-ranking officials. But here, there might be some early move in power. Let's take a look at what happened in previous years. Specifically, on October 3rd, 2023. something happened in the U.S. Congress that had never happened before. Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy was removed from office. Nothing like this had ever happened before, up until October 3, 2023. And just for clarification, the Speaker isn't just the person who leads meetings. It's the third most important position after the President and Vice President. As a result, Ukraine found itself in a tight spot, needing to plan its budget and decide on aid for Ukraine and Israel. Especially dangerous periods for the world, for global stability, will be during September 23rd and 24th, give or take 5 days from those dates, and around October 18th, 2025, also plus or minus 5 days from that date. During these days, the conflict will flare up again. All agreements, all deals, all arrangements involving overlapping battles will be broken here, because there will be another escalation, some kind of military action. A new war could start here, and people will seem to be afraid. So now, let's see how Mars will affect each country individually. Not for every country, but for those countries for which I have horoscopes, and for which this transit brings something interesting. The next country is the United States. For the US horoscope, especially on October 6th, 2025, but the trend continues overall from September 13th to October 27th. There will be difficulties in international relations, in communication, in relationships with alliances, and there will be problems related to trade. There will also be problems with the country's borders and neighbors, with some things not being agreed upon. And for Ukraine, in this period, from September 13th to October 27th, this mainly relates to political difficulties. There could be attacks on politicians, on high-ranking officials here, especially on October 7th, October 23rd, and September 14th. Give or take 5 days around these dates. On October 7th, this is very important. There could be massive administrative attacks, and this is an especially dangerous moment for Ukraine. As I already said, of course, every day in Ukraine is dangerous, but there are relatively quiet periods and there are quite turbulent periods. And now, October 7th is a dangerous period. This could be because of shelling, for example. It could also be other events that negatively affect and put pressure on Ukraine. That's why you need to be careful on these dates. During this period around October 7th. Around October 23rd, 2025, there could be an exposure involving politics or a high-ranking official. It looks like there will be a revolution, or possibly an assassination attempt, and maybe a lot of scandals. Because, indeed, from September 13th, 2025 to October 27th, 2025, there may be scandals in Ukraine for political purposes. The next country is Russia. And here, Mars indicates economic difficulties for the country from September 13th to October 27th, 2025. And around October 4th, there will be a political crisis. Here, there will be some difficulties for high-income individuals and challenges for the budget. The next issue will arise around October 14th. Here, economic difficulties may occur, but these economic problems will either come from the front, with some secret actions or agreements regarding finances and the economy. And these agreements, these secret discussions about finances and the economy, will later have a negative effect on Russia's economy. And overall, it can be said that around October 14th, Russia will be involved in some agreements. But all of this will be kind of underground. All of it will be hidden. This is not for public view. So, what's happening here is something secret and concealed. It's very likely that there could be more financial scandals, maybe even scandals and events in October 15, which are connected to the movement of money that will be happening in the world. All of this will have a very negative effect on Russia's economy. Now it's time for China. For China, from September 13th to October 27th, there will be a negative impact on the government, especially on the country's president. He may face attacks and difficulties, which means that the political situation will develop in such a way that it will be tough for the president and for the Chinese government. The Chinese government may also face health-related difficulties, and there could even be assassination attempts or attacks. This will be especially true around October 21st, 2025. Also, the president of China may be negotiating or trying to negotiate, especially regarding finances and the economy, or his actions aimed at certain economic events, negotiations, or agreements will not be successful. Now, Germany. Overall, from September 13th, 2025 to October 27th, 2025, this period signifies danger in Germany. This danger in the territory could take any form, but it is especially related to security. It is also possible that security services will not function properly, that security services will perform inadequately. These could be terrorist actions on German territory or natural disasters. But here, you can sense that there is a certain sense of security, as if the population is quite afraid. Especially dangerous dates for Germany are in September, the 30th year, the 20th to the 25th, plus or minus 5 days from that date. But the trend continues throughout the entire period. Mars in Libra, that is, from September 13th to October 27th, 2025. But during September 30th, there will be a dangerous situation for Germany. Overall, it will be dangerous. Unexpected events, and this also negatively affects the possibility of reaching an agreement and the negotiation process. And on October 16th, there will be another moment concerning this country, which very clearly shows some scandals in the country and an increased level of danger on German territory. By the way, at this time Germany may experience problems in the area of implementation or in the agricultural sector. Horoscope for India, from September 13th to October 27th, 2025, during this period, conflicts with neighboring countries may arise again in India. There may be new talk of war, or there will be very active actions in equipment and the defense industry, something related to war, or something connected to the medical sector. This is what the country will be actively involved in. Next question. From September 13th to October 27th, 2025, scandals are very likely. There is a strong possibility of an unexpected situation, some kind of exposure, and, in particular, there will be secret communications, agreements, and covert actions by the country. There is also a possibility of inconvenient natural disasters or something like dust storms, particularly around September 29th, 2025. But this trend continues from September 13th to October 27th. If you have questions about geopolitics and want to see what will happen from an astrological perspective, or if you have questions about astrology in general, write them in the comments. And maybe I'll make a video specifically about your topic or question. That's all I have for now. This was me, astrologer Anastasia Sapega.